Well, hello, and welcome to Fun Fantasy FPL. My name is Harry. Sadly, Stephen cannot be joining us this week due to commitments and various other things. But we have a very special guest on this week's podcast. We have mentioned him last week. He's been a constant source of my FPL pain and also commitment. His name is Tommy C. He has been playing the game for 11 years. Best ever finish of 35,000 in the 21-22 season. Currently, this week he sits on 36 points, so a bit disappointing for you. But sitting overall rank of 350k, so still a decent rank. So, Tommy, why don't you introduce yourself to our podcast listeners?
Well, thanks for having me on the pod, Baz. I mean, this is probably the biggest upgrade your podcast has ever had, gone from Stephen to me. I mean, the listeners are in for one hell of a change here. No, yeah, really good to be on. Like I said, I've been playing for a number of years, FPL. We're in a very competitive league, aren't we, Baz? Which is the famous, the notorious EVM, of which
EVM.
No manager in the history of the EVM has a greater record than I. You've won an EVM title, haven't you?
I have, yes. My Leicester season.
Yeah, you won an EVM title, but unfortunately, for the last couple of years, we've had to cede power in the EVM to someone who sort of, I mean, it's a statistical anomaly that he's won two titles. Let's put it that way. So we're on both of us. We're on the warpath to try and get our titles back, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Jake is definitely the thorn in our paw at the moment. But we might get him on next week to do a response to that, Tommy, if Stephen is still unavailable. If
going from me to Stephen was an upgrade, I mean, going from me to Jake, I mean, God, your numbers are going to fall through the floor listening to that guy for an hour.
Nice. Well, look, as you said, Tom, do have a great record in the EVM, and I hope you joined the FPL, the Fun Fantasy FPL league. I think that you will sit second. Is that right?
Second, but I think I'm now down to third after the absolutely god-awful game week that I've had, which I'm sure we'll go into some detail over the next however.
Yeah, definitely. And the other thing to mention for the listeners, if you are ever looking for someone to give you tips on how to create fake news conferences, Tom is an excellent man to do this. He has produced 3 for our league, I believe. All you need is...
Yeah, I think I've done 3 press conferences, and I did a this morning Holly Willoughby tribute one year as well.
That is true. Yes, that was. Well, how can you
just
forget
a
that
hobby?
One?
It's just a hobby.
Just a hobby. So if you need someone who can give you advice on backgrounds and all the rest of it, all you need is something creative to print off, and usually a loving partner to help pretend to be the Sun journalists in the room. So it's an effective way of playing the game. But I think how we're going to cover this week. So we're going to do the game week review as normal. I'm going to ask Tom a few more questions about his season so far, hopes and dreams, and all the rest of it, apart from dethroning Jake. And then we're going to do a bit of an interview, but it's also a sort of clash of ideologies within FPL. As you've kind of heard within Tommy C's mannerisms there, you have a very much a stats-led FPL manager, whereas this podcast is more about the gut calls, the vibes. That's what we go for here. So it's going to be an interesting conversation there. But let's kick off with a game week review. And Tom, why don't you tell us how your season's going so far? Any plans you had? You made 3 transfers this week, some pretty dramatic transfers, I must say, as well. Talk us through it.
Yeah, I mean, look, the worst week possible for me to come on this pod, because it's been an absolutely shocker of a game week for me. Season so far has gone I've been pretty pleased with it, actually. Like I said, before the start of this game week, I was at 100k, which 6 or 7 weeks in, whatever we are now. I'm very, very happy with that. And my plans have kind of gone as expected. To be honest, like I knew I was going to wild card after game week 3. That was always my plan. So I brought in, set up my team for 3 weeks. I feel like based on the new rules, right, in terms of the 5 transfers, being able to roll 5 transfers, and also being able to roll them through a wild card, I think that really, really devalues the wild card this year. So normally I like to hold on to it for as long as possible. I think the last few years I've managed to almost hold on to it until December time. Whereas this year I gave it some thought and realised that actually I really think it's devalued based on the 5 transfer piece.
Yeah.
So targeted the first 3. Where I knew there was a fixture swing. Made my transfers, so played my wild card, and literally this week was the first time I've actually made a proper transfer. So I had 5 transfers in the bank going into this week, and I made 3 transfers, which I took out. I took out Isak, I took out Salah, and I took out Trent, and I brought in Haaland, who blanked. I brought in Trossard, who blanked, and I brought in Gvardiol, who blanked. So yeah, not the most inspired move this week. But no, I'm still happy. I'm looking at my team. I'm very, very happy with it. I'm probably. I suspect in all likelihood I'll roll again next week. Get myself back up to. I'll have 4 free transfers after that again, which is good. So no, I'm really, let me talk you through my team because I haven't done that yet. That will help the
Yeah,
listeners with a
yeah,
bit of
it's a good idea.
context. So I've got Robert Sanchez in goal. With a 4.0 goalkeeper, Sven Bender on the bench. My defence is I've got Gvardiol, Pedro Porro, Rico Lewis, Anthony Robinson, and Yerson Mosquera, who's out for the season. So he's sitting 3rd on the bench. My midfield is Cole Palmer, Leandro Trossard, Brian Mbeumo, Morgan Rogers, and Eberici Eze. And then a front 3 of Haaland, Watkins, and Calvert-Lewin. So I'm pretty comfortable with the team. I like I say, it's just I just think I've had a poor week this week, which is to be expected every now and again. Good start has kind of given me a bit of a buffer there, but I can't have too many weeks like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm just looking for your game week performances so far. 73 points, 72 points, 81 points, 50, 68, 85. And obviously this week at 36. I mean, it's been pretty consistently above the average. So I noticed the 50 points actually when you played your wild card, which is funny. But yeah, it's interesting. You know that it does devalue. I haven't thought about it like that, really. I mean, do you think that it's been a good change for the game?
I love it. I absolutely love it. I think it's a really, really good one because you've got a lot more variance in different teams. So, for example, I think actually this season anyway, in terms of the pricing and different strategies, whether you go Salah Haaland, whether you go just Salah, just Haaland, or whether you go neither, right? So there's basically 4 different setups of teams out there anyway, and then you add in the variance of actually one team might have 1 free transfer, one team might have 5. I think it's been a massive addition for the game. And also, the way that me and you play, you've touched on it already, right? I'd say I'm pretty conservative in the way that I play.
Yeah.
So actually, straight away when I saw this come out, I was like, right, that I'm going to try and roll as many as I can, and then I can try and play from that sort of position of power if I've got 5 in the bank, which is what I've done. You are very much right. You're on the front foot. You're going to attack each sort of game week. So actually, it's probably less of a change for you, I'd say. Tell me I'm wrong, but you in the way that you're going to attack a game week, you can still do that, right? But for me, it was a real change.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's funny that you mentioned that I'm the more attacking manager because Stephen is the more attacking manager compared to me. I'm his Tommy C, if you like.
But Harry, he's not attacking. He's just a lunatic. Some of the moves he makes.
Yeah, no, he is very entertaining for sure with some of his shouts. I mean, I think friends of his and me that we will remember his rants about Riyad Mahrez in the pub, and then only for Riyad Mahrez to score a few seconds later. The man has some opinions, as our podcast listeners will know, but ones that are very entertaining.
I love him for those opinions as well. He's very very interesting to listen to. And it's funny, it's his Vardy pick, right? So I remember listening to his Vardy pick in like week 1. Vardy scored. I'll bring Vardy in. He was never on my radar at all, Jamie Vardy. But actually, I know it hasn't really worked out that well for him. But I mean, I think Vardy should be on a lot of people's radars to bring in at the moment. From last week he had who did he have? He had Bournemouth
Yeah, he's got
last week. Yeah, and now upcoming we've got Southampton, Forest, Ipswich. I mean, he's playing, he's starting every game, I guess as you'd expect. But he's also racking up quite a fair few minutes. He's a fair few 90 minutes in there, which I wasn't expecting. He's on pens. So I sort of I know I'm going to dig Stephen out, and I'm going to continue to dig him out during the pod, but he does have moments of sanity within the madness.
Yeah, no, that's good. It's good to know, and that's why I brought in James Justin. So because I saw that
For every Jamie Vardy that he has, he also has an Ian Matson and an Ahmad Diallo.
Yeah, well, Ahmad did all right at the start, but then he got injured and somehow lost his place to Bashford, which was odd in itself. But that's a bit footbally on FPL such. But so you're overall happy. I mean, even despite this disappointing game week, you're still in the top 500k, which is still very impressive at this stage of the season. And as I always say, you won't win FPL in the first game week, but you can certainly lose in the leagues that you're in. And I think that drives a lot of my decision making, is just trying to gradually climb the table, rather than go for those massive land grabs that maybe Stephen and others do. But like I said, it's funny that you refer to me as an attacking manager for sure. But this week I finished on 55 points, overall rank gain of about 20. I think I'm up 28% on my last rank, so I'm up to 930k now, so a bit further behind you. But I'm pretty happy with the week. Saka outscoring Palmer definitely was a tasty one for sure. Nicholas Jackson is just becoming a pain in my arse, and the fact that João Pedro is not back is also disappointing. So yeah, but the biggest victory I think probably is.
Sorry to interrupt you, Baz. Whilst you're in full swing, how long have you owned Nicholas Jackson for?
Like I bought him after the West Ham game, where he scored 16 points.
Okay. Yeah. So you've got maybe at Brighton away, Forest home, you'd have liked a goal, but you've got an assist out of that. Yeah, it's not ideal. I guess the challenge you've got is now the fixture run, right? You've got Liverpool, Newcastle United, Arsenal. That's what's difficult about him.
Exactly. So it's Liverpool away, Newcastle at home, Man United away, and Chelsea and now Arsenal at home. And then it's in a nicer run afterwards. But he's in 18% of teams. He's 7.7, I think. 7.9 now. Jesus Christ. But I think the way that Chelsea are going, I just kind of want that coverage a little bit. But do you know who I've been talking about quite regularly? I think I mentioned it to you in the pub last night. Like, Liam Delap is getting some really interesting goals and assists, and he's looking good. I like Liam Delap at Ipswich. I'm on the Ipswich train. I really am. So I might take a real dive on the value of Jackson to then fund and invest in elsewhere, and maybe even that would give me the funds later to to change Saka to a Palmer when the fixture swing goes against Arsenal. But then having said that, I mean, Saka's just gone off for a 16-pointer, so can I even be thinking that way? I don't know. But I am disappointed about João Pedro as well, not coming back. That's upsetting. But the biggest victory has to be that Justin comes in with an assist and a clean sheet and a couple of bonus.
Your Justin piece was, I mean, that was really good stuff, to be fair. On Liam Delap as well, I agree with you, right, in terms of what he's actually delivered. But I would put him in the same category, right, as probably as a sort of Calvert-Lewin, as a Jamie Vardy. I know he's a little bit cheaper, but I think you look at for example, and again we'll probably come on to this a bit later in terms of how we use expected data. But his expected goals per 90 it currently is 0.2. So what you're saying there is you're expecting him to get a goal every 5 games. Calvert-Lewin at the moment we're looking at about 0.3. So between 1 in 3, 1 in. Actually, I'm looking at the wrong thing. No, I'm looking at the wrong data. My bad. No, it is.
The data's lying to you, Tom. The data's
no, it's not. The data's not lying to me. My eyes are lying to me. So Delap is currently outperforming his expected goals by quite a margin. Again, it's not a huge. We've only played 7 games, right? So it's not particularly reliable data points. Calvert-Lewin's tracking pretty much on it, as is Vardy. So yeah, I mean, I think I agree with you. I think Delap looks good. His minutes will be be good in the same way that you probably think, probably better than Vardy and Calvert-Lewin, I'd say. So maybe with that argument, you do go with Delap over Vardy and Calvert-Lewin, but I think they're all in that
Yeah,
same bucket.
he is definitely in my thoughts, and I think that I am edging towards the wild card. And I think it's interesting that you talk about how it has how the latest changes have devalued the wild card, but I also do want to give Saka the full chance to get through his fixtures. The sort of this run of fixtures that they had that were just really nice. So I am tempted to wildcard, but I need to maybe hold off this week and then not make any transfers this week. I could probably deal with no transfers this week, and just deal with the fact that Nicholas Jackson's away at Liverpool, and then my back line's pretty set. Everything else is okay. Captain Haaland away to Wolves, although I think Wolves have been really unlucky. Their fixture start has been awful. Genuinely, it's been one of the toughest fixture runs I've ever seen. So they won't be easy, but I think it's probably the best captaincy choice, I would have thought. But what are your plans this week? You're not making any transfers at all, just rolling?
The plan will probably be to roll. In the moment, I've got a benching dilemma. But I've got 8 what I would sort of call good attackers, right? My worst, in theory, my worst attacker is either Morgan Rogers or probably Calvert-Lewin. So I'm in a position where I'm either going to bench. I don't want to bench Calvert-Lewin away to Ipswich. I'm certainly not benching Watkins or Haaland away to Fulham and Wolves. I'm not going to bench Palmer away to Liverpool. I don't really. I'm going to sell him at some point, Palmer, because I think like I said, their fixtures not great. Whether it's this week or not, probably not. Trossard being benched really did me. And again, I like, and again, we might come on to this later in terms of the data. As much as I look at expected data, I really want sort of nailed starters, and I knew Trossard wasn't. I knew he wasn't a nailed starter, unlike
it was a pun.
A lot of my other players. But I kind of I almost thought I'm only probably going to have him for 2 weeks anyway. And I kind of thought, I'll treat myself. I'll treat myself here to someone who is a little bit more of a min's risk. Like I said, the FPL gods came and told me off for that by immediately benching him the week I bring him in. So I've got a little concern with him as to maybe if he is going to be benched again for Arsenal, if I've got that risk, maybe I bench him away to Bournemouth. I don't want to do that though. And the other two, I've got a Burmo away to United and Rogers away to Fulham. So at the moment, it probably and they away to Forest. At the moment, it probably looks like I'd probably bench Rogers away to Fulham, which again I don't like because I think Morgan Rogers is very, very dangerous.
Yeah. I love Rogers. I think he's just class, isn't he? He's just a class player. But I think the interesting thing is obviously now.
So I've just talked about how I like players with safe minutes, and I also have Rico Lewis and Josko Gvardiol on my team who definitely aren't safe for minutes. So maybe I'm preaching something that I'm not doing.
Yeah, maybe. Well, I mean, the other thing to mention is we do have the international break now, so there is a lot of space there for you to kind of gain a bit more information. Obviously, Arsenal's next fixture is Bournemouth away, and then they've got the Champions League game at home to Shakhtar Donetsk. But I can't imagine Shakhtar Donetsk putting up that much for a fight, so he probably would play a stronger team in the Bournemouth game than he would that game. And then he's got Liverpool, Preston away on a Wednesday night. They're within 3 days of playing Liverpool. Jesus.
Yeah, no one's playing in that, are they?
Yeah, and then they've got the 12:30 kickoff on Saturday afterwards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I mean, I know that it's a bit of a hot topic at the moment about player time, but maybe that's something we could do at a different podcast. But I mean, it definitely shows there. But look, I think we've pretty successfully covered the game weeks there. So pretty much, you're sure you're not going to make the transfer. You're not going to do a Stephen and make a transfer live on the pod, but maybe you might get some
certainly not going to be doing that.
Yeah, the knee jerk beyond knee jerks. I don't think I'm going to be making a transfer. I think I'm pretty set. I don't mind Nicholas Jackson away. I'll play Liverpool next, whether he's home or away. And the rest.
Is that why Stephen can't make it today? Is he dislocated his knee after all the jerking he does on this podcast?
I think so. I think that's the only explanation why he would miss this. So definitely the case. But it brings us very nicely onto the main topic, which is to a certain extent you, Tom, and your ideology. And I'm going to hold you entirely responsible for this ideology, despite it being on nearly every single podcast, content creator, FPL Twitter account that exists. You're obviously reading off a few sheets of data there. So why don't you tell us? I mean, and also just to introduce us to the rest of the listeners, this is a quote that stuck with me from Tommy C, and that is FPL is a science, not an art. And we on this podcast very much lean towards the artistic flavor that is FPL. The idea that we all remember John Ludstrom's points those seasons many years ago. We don't remember an Edison 6-pointer. We don't remember it. It's the excitement that gets us through the game weeks and the fun that we have with it. But you come from a slightly different school of thought, although I'm sure you do have fun with the game, in so much as anyone would writing or watching Moneyball. So why don't you tell us how you set up your teams? What is your ethos around FPL? And just unpack that a little bit further.
Yeah, like you said, the FPL is a science, not an art. I think that's an interesting point. I mean, the aforementioned Jake in our league, right? He used to say for years that FPL is an art, not a science, and I eventually managed to sort of turn him round to my way of thinking too. That it's in fact science. Well, I really see it. It is really like it's a numbers game, right? The game's all about data. You pick your players. You need to make sure they've got good value based on what their price is and what you expect them to get there. How many points you expect them to get off each week or across the course of the season. Now, how you do that, different people do it in different ways. But whether you consciously do it and you have a spreadsheet like I do that sort of tells you those numbers, and then therefore you can work out what their value is, or whether you just have an insight, an idea in your head, in the same way that I think you did with sort of James Justin, right? He might get me lots of points and he's really cheap. It's exactly the same mentality that I have, but we probably just go around it in slightly different ways.
Yeah, so basically, I mean, obviously, like you were reading off some reams of data there earlier when we were talking about some players. So, I mean, when you're building your team, are you going right? So this person has the best XG, they're going in, or this person has best FA, so they're going in. These guys have a good defensive record, and as a result, they're going in. Or is it more? Are there more factors that go into it? So is there? And again, like I want, I guess it's kind of about understanding the perspective. Because like you said, the James Justin shout was relatively rogue, but it also was based on the fact that A, Leicester had good fixtures, and B, he just scored 2 goals. So there was like a level of data in there, although it was a bit punty. So we may have got to the same conclusion by different channels, but it's more just understanding the channel and the mindset you go through when building a team.
And right, so that's really interesting, right? Because what you're saying there is you're looking at the data and you're looking at the fact that just wasn't. I can't remember those goals actually, but I suspect off the back of that game he would have had quite a relatively high XG. So you can see that from last week, and you're going to try and use that to sort of predict that he might do well again this year. Sorry, this week.
Yeah,
I would. That's not an approach I would take. I would always look at a much bigger sort of data sample in terms of time period of the in terms of population, right? So I do a lot. Probably the most amount of data that I look at would actually be creating my team for game week 1.
Yeah,
and I'd look at the whole of the course of the last season. And I basically pull all their expected goals per 90. So understanding if they played every single minute of every of a game across the season, what would their average game look like? And at that point there, you can work out, okay, so if they played that game 38 times, this is the amount of points they'd get. Now I can now divide that by what their price is for this season, and therefore I get an expected value. And then it's not therefore right. I now need to look at the top 11 players, the top 15 players that come up in that list, and I'll put them in my team. You have to have a bit of nuance into it, because someone that's just come on the pitch for 2 minutes. Let give an example, right? For this season, the most let me get that list up again. The striker with the highest expected goals per 90 is Danny Ings. Okay, now no one's rushing to buy Danny Ings.
5 million
to bring,
I think.
The team. Say again.
He's 5 million on FPL. Could be a good shout.
Exactly, but no, it's not a good shout at all because he doesn't play. The reason he's got that really high expected goals per 90 piece is because he probably was on the pitch for 10 minutes, and he had a great chance at that point. So then you extrapolate it across the whole. If he does that, if he has that 10 minutes across the 90, then he's gonna be brilliant. But he's just not. We know he's not. We know Danny Ings is not a striker that's going to get in positions where he's going to get 0.92 xG per 90. Interestingly, actually, this is very interesting. Actually, second, seemingly with 0.9 xG per 90, which is incredibly high, is your man Nicholas Jackson. So maybe you should hold on to him throughout those fixtures. But actually, I'm going to contradict myself here as well. This season, even I wouldn't look at this season's data really at all at this stage, because it's 6 weeks in. Is it 6 or is it 7? I can't remember.
7.
That's nowhere near enough for me to say, oh, actually, right, I'm very confident now that Nicholas Jackson's going to have a great season.
So then, how are you basing it mid-season? So obviously, you do that analysis of last season, and then that informs how you build your team game week 1. But then, how does that? Obviously, there's not enough data, but obviously, you get progressively more in this current season. I mean, my first question was going to be, how many game weeks is enough to then be enough of a wider spread of data enough to use as conclusions? And also, what do you do about transfers throughout the season? I mean, if you need to make a transfer game week 3, how are you relying on the data? Are you relying on the data? And if not, what other things are going into that kind of conclusions you come to?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I just need to correct something I said earlier as well. Actually, I hadn't scrolled up high enough. Haaland is the highest XG per 90 strike this season with 0.3.
You're having an absolute Western. You're having an absolute Western with reading data.
But Danny Ings is just 0.01 behind Erling Haaland. So if we're looking at this at face value, Danny Ings is probably the second best player in the world at the moment. So in terms of throughout the season, this is the point again. I'm not looking at it purely as when I look at my data, it's not like a bot where it's spitting out and it's telling me this is exactly what to do. Most of the time I'm using it to judgment call, right? So I brought in Leandro Trossard this week because you look at the fixtures, right? It's a clear fixture piece, actually. It's a clear fixture move. They've got a couple of good fixtures. I know I need someone short term in that position. Perfect, he'll do. And it was between him and Martinelli for me. Clearly, it would have been better to go for Martinelli. So at that point there, I had a quick look at their stats, their expected goal data and expected assist data for last year, and I looked at it this year as well as a bit of a guide just to see if actually there's anything to say. Oh my God, this season Martinelli is playing significantly higher up the pitch than he was, and Trossard's move to that sort of false nine position is having a much bigger impact on his expected assist data, expected goals data. In reality, they both married up pretty evenly, and I went with Trossard because I just thought he was probably more likely to keep his place. Now, clearly, I was wrong there, although they did both lose. Haaland and Gvardiol. Gvardiol was quite an interesting one, actually, because Gvardiol, I did look at his data at the start of last season, because he had a really freakish last 10 games of the year last year. He was basically playing left wing.
Where I owned him as well. He did really well for me.
Yeah, he was brilliant, wasn't he? He was absolutely brilliant. Whereas the start of this season, you could just sort of, watching the games, I watched a lot of football as well. You could see quite clearly that he was sitting back, particularly in those first 2 games. I was keeping an eye on him because, again, I think Jake had him in his team from the start. So, I was a bit worried about him sort of going off. And he just wasn't. He was sitting really deep. And that showed in the expected data as well. But actually, again, then you start to see, who did he play? He played. The Arsenal game was a bit of a freak one, but the one before that as well, I could see he was playing quite high up. The expected data for that game, I don't really care about it on a game by game basis. You can't look at it for one game and make a judgment call. But you can see he's now back playing that. Probably maybe not as high as he was at the end of last season, but he's becoming a good asset again.
It must be the Newcastle game, right? The Newcastle game is when he changed positions and went a bit further forward.
Yeah, I think you're right. But yeah, those first couple of games, he was properly deep. He's playing as a fullback again. And you don't want to put in 6 million on him to do that. So, and to answer your question on how much data can you use to sort of have a reliable view? I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea. I was listening to who is it? I think it might be Who Got the Assist. I think it was those guys. and they did like a special a couple of years ago during the summer where they got some fancy data. You know, and again, all joking aside, for that sort of stuff, Jake is in a much better position to answer those questions. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But you know, they were basically saying, you know, you need probably about, you know, you probably need 1,000 pieces of data, right, to make a call. So that's 1,000 games of a player. I mean,
Yeah.
you're never going to get that, right? That's just not the game. So you can't you there. And also at that point there, you pretty much have exactly a right answer and a wrong answer on what to do. The thing with
Yeah.
FPL is there isn't a right answer. There isn't. But sometimes there's wrong answers. Sometimes you pick James Justin, and there is a wrong answer. But you know, in reality, that's, you know, that there are no right ways and right picks to make. Otherwise, we'd all be making those.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's how much what data you feel comfortable, right? You felt comfortable having seen James Justin score 2 goals against Arsenal. Do you know what? He might do that again. I wouldn't feel comfortable with that call.
I mean, I think I wasn't
I'd,
really.
I'd want to see him. I'd want to see him score. Uh, 76 goals across the season. You know, maybe if he does that for 3 weeks in a row, 4 weeks in a row, then I might start to
Yeah.
um, start to be like, oh, actually, he could be on track to do something special here. Bring him in, but I mean, you know, see that his role in the team's changed.
This is where the contrasting like views of FPL come into it, because I picked him. I've wanted to own him for all season, right? Him and Leif Davis, I wanted to own all season. Mostly because Leif Davis I watched in the Championship last year, and he was amazing. 18 assists, unbelievable, great player. Really think he's created some pretty high XG chances, I think, this season. So again, a bit of that data in there. But the reason why I was really hot on Justin was that I remember I owned him a couple of seasons ago in my Leicester season, I believe, and he scored a goal at Fulham, I think it was. Like, he took it round the keeper. It was an unbelievable finish. Like, it was a striker's finish. It actually reminded me of Eric Dyer's debut goal on his debut start at West Ham. The only goal of the game. He took it from midfield, ran around the keeper, scored. Absolute scenes. And it just kind of made me think, clearly when this person gets into those positions, he can finish. And the second goal he scored against Arsenal, I mean, that reminded me of Benjamin Pavard's goal in the World Cup in Russia, the France against Argentina.
Exactly.
It's unbelievable. I mean, obviously Benjamin Pavard's I think was better because it's further out, and I mean that was just like absolute thing of beauty that was. But James Justin's was very similar, and I was just like, this guy, you know, he could quite easily be in a game where, let's say they're losing 1-0 away at Bournemouth because they got Southampton next, on Bournemouth. No, Southampton. If they're away at Southampton losing 1-0, you can see he would be very far advanced in that box, trying to score goals, trying to get the assists. So I look at it, and I always go for cheap defenders, as you know. I look at it and go, as a points per million, I think he has a higher chance of getting to that than most other 4.5s. And he's more going to give me that return. So yeah, a lot of it was, there was a bit of data in there, a bit of understanding of the fixtures, but also it was just pure vibes from that goal against Fulham that informed my decision making.
But that's the point, right? This week, my looking at it playing quite a long term sort of conservative game, it just didn't work. Yours did. You brought in James Justin. He scored you 10 points. You know, that's you know that your idea worked this week. Mine didn't. You know, and that's the point, right? My hope is that my strategy works. You know, out of the 38 game weeks, I'm hoping that mine maybe works 22 times, and to your 16, where you win. If that happens, then I'll finish above you in the league. You're hoping the opposite. You're hoping that the sort of the more vibes and watching, reacting to what happened maybe the last couple of weeks will mean that you beat me over the course of the season. That's the game, right?
Yeah, it's the game. That's the game.
Well, find out the season. It was right.
Yeah, and it will be an interesting conversation for sure when we get to the end of that season. But look, I think that's demonstrated really nicely. And I know it's a bit of a slight change of tact to Stephen just saying, yeah, do you know what I'm feeling this week? Bring in Timber and captain him. So maybe a bit slight step change to the listeners. But I hope that they found the perspective that you put forward interesting, because I think that as we always say, there is no one way to play the game. There is no one answer. Otherwise, everyone would have the same points all of the time. I think it's much more a game where you have to find your own style that works for you, what you feel comfortable with. You clearly have found that with your way of setting up. I do have a spreadsheet as well, but it's more for tracking fixtures because I'm much more a fixtures over form person. And that in that way, I'm quite conservative. So, for example, everyone was like ripping up their teams to get Palmer in this week, and most people were selling Saka for that. And I was thinking to myself, no, but the fixtures, man, the fixtures, look at them, And I just knew that, I mean, look, Palmer is an incredible asset, and he's definitely going to be in the top sort of 5, maybe. I would say top 5. He's going to be the top 5 FPL point scorer this season, probably. But I just think that with Saka's fixtures, his upside was much higher. So I stuck with that. So I don't know whether that fits within the structure that you have there, or whether. I mean, who are you? Are you a fixtures over form?
Oh, yeah, 100% fixtures over form, and I'm a fixtures over fixtures first, and then I'll look at the data, right? So, like, I didn't, in my Trossard example that I gave, I didn't look at the data and be, oh, right, therefore, I want Leandro Trossard. Oh, it turns out actually it's quite helpful because Arsenal have got a good run of fixtures as well. It was purely I wanted to get an Arsenal player in for these next 2 weeks, and then I looked at it. So fixtures are, for me, I agree with you, Baz. Fixtures by far and away my number one consideration when building my team. And when looking at my long-term planning in terms of transfers, fixtures 100% the first thing I look at.
Yeah. I mean, that's how I got my season.
When we go back to the data as well, though, just going back to Stephen as well, he'll be pleased to hear that Ian Matson is behind only Trent Alexander-Arnold on his expected assists per 90. So if he ends up getting in the team, he might be all right. But you don't get no points for being on the bench, Stephen.
Yeah, that's a good piece of advice there, Tommy C. I'm sure the listeners and Stephen would appreciate that. I think what's funny is that I'm pretty sure I know where that expected assist points percentages come from, and it's from that one assist. Well, that one ball he put into Watkins when he could have scored his 3rd goal against. I want to say it was like Everton or Newcastle. I can't remember, but where he scored 2 goals in that game, and he could have had a 3rd. And Matheson put it on an absolute, it was amazing. A great ball in. Yeah. And Watkins missed. But that assist, that was it should have been a goal. So I can understand.
I'm really surprised he's not playing, actually. And again, not to then turn this into proper football conversation, but I am really surprised that he's not playing. Surprised that Luca Dean's getting more minutes than him. But anyway, that probably will. I suspect at the end of the season he'll be starting, but there's no point in betting. There's no point in betting your fantasy points as to when that's going to be. I think you're much better off waiting until he's maybe had three starts on the bounce. He's comfortable. You're comfortable. He's a starter, and Villa hit a nice run of fixtures.
Yeah. I think it's almost like the mirror signal maneuver of FPL, isn't it? Really, fixtures. What does their data look like, and what's the long-term planning across the season? That's your mentality, I think, probably in a nutshell. Whereas I probably go fixtures. Do I have any vibes at all? And then I'll look at some of the points and maybe some other content creators out there about FPL and see what they're doing as well. And then
it famously worked pretty well for you with Mikel Antonio a few years ago, didn't it?
Yes, it did. Oh, Mikel Antonio he's still living in Jake's head rent free, cheapest rent in London, I hear. So yeah, that was a great day. For those who don't know, that was the West Ham game against Norwich where he scored 4 goals, and it pretty much. It undid the seams, didn't it? Way
the seamstress was no more.
The seamstress was no more. But cool. Okay, well that's good. I mean, look, I hope the listeners have found that useful because I think it's really important. As I was sort of summarizing earlier, everyone plays the game the way they feel comfortable. It's about what you feel comfortable doing. It's not always about just copying what other people are doing. You can do that, and it can work. But ultimately, I think the best moments I've had with FPL is when I've made a decision based on a few bits and pieces and a gut call has been involved in that conversation and it's worked. So the Justin shout, I'm really, really chuffed about that. Really chuffed about it because it was just like, yeah, do you know what? It might work. And it did. And it's like, so I think it gives me infinitely more joy. But that's how it works.
I totally agree with you on that as well. Like if you go for like a a vibes pick, right, and it turns out you were right. I totally agree with you. You'll get more joy from it, and you'll get more pleasure from picking, Jamie Vardy, James Justin, I don't know, whoever the next one's going to be. You're right. No one else has picked them that week. Whereas,
Mm,
if I'm being a bit more conservative, my picks generally, I'm picking a lot of the players that a lot of people are picking at that time.
yeah.
When I'm getting those points, I don't feel, it doesn't feel like it's a purely me that's celebrating. And I agree with you. I think you get more pleasure when it goes well. I think you get more pleasure playing your way.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is why we started this podcast, Tom, to spread this joy amongst the many and see how much joy we can bring them. But that's a good way to end that particular topic for us. So we're going to move on to our last section, the football illitage. And I'm not going to do the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire theme tune now. I'm sorry, Tom, you're not going to hear a live rendition of that. I think it's just too
Dun, dun,
cringy.
dun.
Oh, there we go, Tom. We're going to clip that up. Rita, let's clip that up. Absolutely, let's use it. So last week, you may remember that Stephen asked the question this time, and the question was there are four FAs that make up ifab, so the international organization that sort of judges all the laws of the game in world football, and there are four of the FAs that make up of it. Which were those four? Tommy C admitted to me that he did Google this afterwards. Listeners, do not do this.
Well, no,
But
I had my guess in my head, and
oh,
then
did
I
you?
googled it to find out if I was right, and I was wildly wrong.
What was your guess in your head? Just out of interest.
Um, I thought it would probably be four of the big European sort of football associations. So I went with, I think in my head I was England, Germany, Italy, and Spain. Maybe I didn't include the French.
Yeah,
But, wildly wrong.
yeah. So wildly wrong there. So it's giving you a hint there. So the answer is England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. So essentially meaning that the laws of international football are governed by the United Kingdom. It's quite a statement, I
You'll
think.
never sing that. You'll never sing that.
Yeah, great. It's quite a while to start that. But as we have a guest on this week, a Stephen substitute, Tom has come armed this week with his question, which will be in our football heritage section. So Tom, take it away.
Okay, so my question for listeners this week is: who is the only Premier League winner whose surname is made up entirely of Roman numerals? So, who is the only Premier League winner with a surname made entirely of Roman numerals?
So that is. So Tom obviously told me this question before we came on air and recorded this, and I just said that is the most Tommy C question you could ever think of. It's very much complexity in there, and we'll be writing this down in the posts when we share it on Instagram, Twitter, and all of the podcast apps that you'll be listening on. So please do comment in the section with your guesses. Don't Google. Google is banned. If you Google and then send us an answer, you will be banned. No, I'm joking. But have a guess, see what you think, and we'll reveal the answer next week. So that all leaves us to say thank you, Tom, for joining us, for filling in for Stephen. And yeah, look, as we always like to do, we try to get some wild shouts out of our. I try to get wild shouts out of Stephen, but to be honest, that's just like asking him a question. But for you, could you give us a wild shout for this season? So a player that maybe not many people own or are aware of that is either going to go off or it's going to tick along really nicely and going to end up in that top 10 or top 15 at the end of the season. Or maybe there's a team that surprised you in some way and we should be either targeting or investing in.
Okay, so that's a very, very good question. My wild shout. Oh dear, dear, dear. I'm kind of going to go with one that might not impact FPL. Although no, I'm not going to do that because that's not very good. My wild shout is going to be that Tottenham will finish above Liverpool this season. So
Oh,
I will say throughout, Tottenham's good spells, get on board with Tottenham. I know we're doing this after they've just collapsed,
oh, don't
as
tell
they
me.
normally do. But I'm a big flange Postecoglou fan, so I think he'll get it together, and I'm going to say that Tottenham will finish above Liverpool this season.
You haven't said where in the table they're going to finish as well. So it could be like Tottenham finish eighth and Liverpool finish ninth, but I don't think that's what you mean.
I'll go with
But
third
that's
and fourth.
three and four.
Yeah.
Wowzers! Not even I would say that. And do you think that's an outperformance for Tottenham?
Yeah, I think it is in line with what Looney Tottenham fans expect them to where Looney Tottenham fans expect them to be, and I think this season they might just do it.
I don't know who you're referring to with these loony Tottenham fans. They're probably people that just watch from afar and have no idea. But I know that I know like I would be very happy with fifth. Personally, I would be very very happy with fifth. So if we even get in Champions League, I'll be ecstatic. I actually kind of like Liverpool for the title. To be honest, that'll be my wild shout for the season.
Uh,
Um,
we
I
definitely can't both be right then.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly right. I actually really like them for the season for winning the Premier League. I think that Arnie Slot's slotted in there nicely, and you haven't seen the collapse that you saw at United after Fergie left, which is what everyone compared it to. That was the narrative, but he just seems to have got on with it, and you know got a pretty awful win against Palace, but that's what champions do, isn't it? Really. Um, but yeah, look, I don't know. I mean, Man City and Arsenal are so good. It's hard really to see how anyone can beat them. But at the moment, Liverpool sit top of the tree. So we'll see what happens at the end of the season. So yeah, Tom, thanks once again for filling in. We have been Fun Fantasy FPL. Please do give us a like and a subscribe on the podcast apps that you're listening to this on. Follow us on Instagram, Fun Fantasy FPL underscores in between, and at Fun Fantasy FPL on Twitter. And please do join the mini league. We can give some shout outs to the mini league actually, whilst we've got just closing off for it. So currently, with my performances this week, I've gone up to seventh. Would you believe it? Joint seventh with our man John Chapman. And top of the league is Rita, and then we have Luke Douse, and then yourself, Tom, in third place. So it's getting pretty competitive. We're at
Who's fourth? Who's fourth?
who's fourth is Ollie
Mhm.
Palmer. Did you just want to dig him out? Is that what you wanted to do?
No, 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 no. I just wanted to make sure he had a shout out. Ollie Palmer of the Lazy Susans. I need to make sure he had a shout out.
Oh, of course, yeah. Well, there's a shout out for Ollie Palmer. I hope he is very chuffed with that. Stephen, I can't actually see. Has he left the league? No, he can't have left. No, oh, there we go. I can see him now. He is sitting at 30th, and we have 35 in that league. So yeah, look, please do join us on that league. The code is 6RYMBG. But we'll be sharing it on the various social medias, but we will close the league eventually. So please do join before game week 10. And then all it needs to say is goodbye for me, and thanks for listening.
I have listened to some of the Easter eggs at the end before, but I mean, you just said they're quite funny. Maybe I haven't listened to those ones.